Okay, thank you, Mr. Lau. A very good afternoon, everyone. I am Leonard Lim from UNIMAS, also a member of UNIMAS Water Center. Many thanks for inviting me to give a talk on World Water Day, which I will talk about something related to this year's theme, groundwater, why we should protect it. The answer is simple. Water is the essence of life, and we are just borrowing from our future generation, so it is our responsibility to ensure the environment is being preserved as well as possible. However, the process and effort to protect it can be complex due to the conflict with economic growth and urbanization. Before we dive into this topic, I would like to brief about groundwater as the theme goes, making the invisible visible. So groundwater is the water from the precipitation seeping through and stored beneath the Earth's surface in soil and porous rock aquifers, which also acts as a natural water purification media. In hydrogeology, an aquifer is an underground layer of water-bearing soil which readily transmits appreciable amount of water. There are basically two types of aquifer: unconfined being the top layer directly below the land ecosystem, and confined aquifer being the layers underneath the impermeable layers. The journey of a drop of water in soil can take from days to centuries, as you can see from the illustration. For water which passes through the confining bed is most likely cleaner than the unconfined aquifer, but it takes centuries to treat the water. This is how precious the confined aquifer is. However, this does not overshadow the importance of groundwater in unconfined aquifer, which supports the land and water ecosystems in the form of forests, rivers, and lakes. And I would like to bring to your attention to the fact that whatever human activities being done on land will directly affect the groundwater quality. And the timeline is similar to the timeline shown in the groundwater cycle. And once contaminants get into soil, it will be an uphill challenge and would involve much more cost to remediate or clean up, which is then approximately only a fifth of potential financial impact of water risk if nothing is being done. Even then, the groundwater pollution is an irrecoverable impact as we cannot remove all the contaminants in the soil. Groundwater plays a pivotal role in sustaining the land and water ecosystem. It provides essential water and nutrients for flora and fauna. It also maintains base flow of rivers to support aquatic species. And as groundwater fills the voids among the soil layer, it gives strength to prevent land subsidence. And in coastal areas, groundwater prevents seawater intrusion. So over-abstraction of groundwater will decrease the groundwater head below that of the sea, and therefore allows the seawater to intrude. So a measure to avoid seawater intrusion is to inject treated water via injection well to maintain the groundwater head at that of the sea level. So we cannot just think of withdrawing and hoping for timely recharge of groundwater. These are the basics which I hope you remember so that you can visualize the invisible. Among the major concerns over the past decades has been access to clean water, which half the population experiences severe water scarcity at least 1 month a year. This situation threatens the health, food security, poverty, and even education, to say the least. Those affected, especially in arid areas, some had to walk for 3 kilometers just to collect groundwater, and children who had to do this chore would be deprived of education. So scarcity of natural groundwater source is an issue, especially in impoverished and arid places. Not to mention the COVID-19 pandemic hit these people the hardest. Elsewhere in developed countries such as China and the United States are experiencing scarcity in the form of depletion of groundwater due to over-abstraction to meet the demand of population growth, industrial expansion, lingering agricultural activities over the years. So the depletion of groundwater will lead to the deterioration of groundwater quality, for example, saltwater intrusion in coastal areas, land subsidence, and poorly controlled pollution. As a result of booming economy, 80% of China's groundwater has been contaminated by toxic metals and other pollutants that the groundwater is unfit for human consumption. Consequently, significant efforts are made to address water shortages in scarcity-prone regions, including pipeline transfers, desalination, and stronger urban design standards. However, the depletion of groundwater still continues and the impacts are dire, both for individual users and for urban health and safety in general. In addition, the deteriorating groundwater quality would burden existing purification systems. We should learn from the experiences by these countries and plan our development in a more sustainable manner to avoid encountering adverse impact from poorly managed human activities, especially in the current the booming of oil palm plantation and industrial zones. In short, the groundwater in Sarawak is relatively intact in general, so it is still timely for us to plan sustainable development measures to minimize pollution. More so when we currently do not have the economic capabilities and local technologies to recover from shortage of fresh water like China if we ever get into such situation. The United Nations recognizes the threats and thus outline the specific targets under the respective sustainable development goals. This target needs to be addressed by all relevant stakeholders, from governance for formulating policies and frameworks to implementation and other stakeholders, for example, consultants, contractors, suppliers, and community. We all need to understand our roles too. Conservation and restoration of terrestrial and freshwater ecosystem is among the target under SDG 15, Life on Land. For example, in Brazil, the maintenance of biodiversity in rural Amazonia involve empowerment of local people to safeguard the producers of forests from being taken by illegal loggers and miners. As a result, the forest was able to provide its environmental services like carbon storage and groundwater recharge. There are much more efforts such as independent monitoring for forest protection using remote sensing as well as provide economic viability for local people. SDG 6 is not just about access to clean water supply, but the effort extends to measures for preserving freshwater sources in the form of reducing pollution in Target 6.3, using alternative water sources such as rainwater harvesting in Target 6.4, monitoring and protecting the water-related ecosystem in Target 6.6, and managing water resources in Target 6.5. This visualization map shows the SDG targets can be interlinked depending on the issues being addressed, and the linkages depends on the respective targets to be addressed. So in other words, the targets can be achieved by addressing the other relevant targets together. For example, in the case of conserving a groundwater source, there's a need to protect and restore water-related ecosystem, which is target 6.6, and improve water quality by reducing pollution, target 6.3, and so on. This requires a concerted effort from various stakeholders, such as multidimensional issue calls for collaborative action, as can be seen in this SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. So looking at Sarawak, where are we in terms of groundwater? There was a report done in 2011, and It shows the location of groundwater basins identified in RMK9. The study areas were concentrated around coastal regions based on the water demand zones where there is development. At the time, the report focused on identification of basin. However, it did not report on the groundwater quality, as there is a need to monitor groundwater quality to ensure it is not contaminated and fit for consumption. So of the 52 groundwater monitoring wells managed by JMG, Kabong and Igan had significant change in groundwater quality due to human activities. In rapidly developing regions, groundwater provides a quick and easy way to satisfy the water demand. However, we must also bear in mind that groundwater should be considered as the last resort for fresh water, especially when surface water is no longer reliable, and more so with the impact of uh, climate change. So this is also one of the reasons why we should protect our groundwater source. And it is also important to note that we also have some groundwater aquifers further inland reported in 2008. So having seen the extreme water stress in other parts of the world, we are blessed to be located in the tropics where we receive abundant precipitation that we can still rely on surface runoff in most places. And considering most groundwater aquifers in Sarawak has yet to be tapped, it is only sensible to step up measures to protect our precious groundwater resources through concerted surveillance and sustainable development for our future generation. It is through timely protection of these water resources that we can prevent from the need for expensive technological solutions in response to any urgent demand. As the saying goes, make hay while the sun shines, and prevention is better than cure. There are multiple ways we can protect our groundwater. It ranges from conserving and restoring natural ecosystem, tackling water demand by understanding water demand. We can see how and where we can save on water consumption to reduce stress on supply. Other measures are to minimize pollution through use of organic compounds and implementing cleaner emission approaches. As precautionary measures, constant monitoring of groundwater quality to make sure it is not polluted. And in terms of governance, formulation of strategies to encourage major stakeholders to play their role in protecting the groundwater, either through incentives or penalties, and collaborate with communities and other local stakeholders to address the shared water challenges as what we have seen in Brazil. Government agencies need to work together for making sustainable decisions instead of continuing KPI-based work alone culture, which often results in financial wastage due to insufficient allocation to perform conclusive monitoring. Disclosure of environmental information by government agencies via integrated database will help other stakeholders to perform their comprehensive study when planning for development. Through STEM education, we can assist our younger generation to appreciate treated water supply. This is what our ACES team did in Telok Melano 3 months ago. Kids learn about water filtration and they are being challenged to clean seawater using water filters they made. At the same time, they learned it is difficult to clean water using simple means. So this is how they learn the importance of not polluting the water. Other examples are the gazettement of national parks and freshwater sources, including river basins, and traditional paddy farming in Baklalan using buffalo dung as organic fertilizer, so to promote organic farming in agriculture to reduce pollution. Our state government has been pushing on supplying clean water in rural areas. However, one aspect which requires urgent attention is our sanitation systems, especially in rural areas. This is an example of a flush toilet in a rural village which flushed into an unlined pit. So this will contaminate the groundwater. One solution is to use dry composting toilet, which enables self-management of compost as they are living beyond the coverage of municipal services. And at the same time, you can reduce water demand for flush, and there's no flush to pollute the groundwater. In urban areas, all concrete septic tanks typically have cracks and also contributes to leakage of sewage, which pollutes the groundwater as well. Another area is waste management. There is a need to improve landfilling facilities by having line disposal sites and expedite on phasing out open dumping. A viable approach is to manage organic waste through composting and conversion into biochar, and initiate recycling of waste such as plastic and construction waste. Plastics can be converted into tiles, as has been done in India, Indonesia, Kenya, and the Philippines, and they are managed in small to medium scale. And we have a team in UWC looking into this. So as mentioned earlier, our groundwater is anecdotally generally intact as it is not to the level of being contaminated by toxic chemicals. So we are still on time to protect them via real-time groundwater monitoring, both in terms of quantity and quality, to ensure the availability of groundwater aquifer and do not suffer from pollution. The Unimas Water Center has a group of experts to develop a groundwater monitoring and surveillance system for Sarawak. So the take-home message is we are still on time to protect our groundwater resources from depletion through a concerted effort to develop Sarawak sustainably. So we should take action today. Thank you.